What's going on, everybody? It's Kyo Vinek, and today we're going to check out the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 5. If you guys watch my Google Pixel 2 XL review, you know that I've been wanting to get my hand on a phone like this since like 2019. And after my experience with the Z Fold 5, I feel like this phone still has some things to work on, but we'll get into that later. This phone came out in July 2023, and I recently copped this about a month ago. After 5 generations, it may seem like ordinary tech, but there is a lot that's going on. So first, let's talk about the front display, but we'll call that the cover display. We have a Gorilla Glass Victus 2. It's an AMOLED panel with a refresh rate of up to 120 Hz. It measures at 6.2 inches with a resolution of 904 by 2316 pixels. Now at first, I thought this was really cool. It's different, and the quality of the display is beautiful. But the narrow shape of the cover display is not practical. A lot of content is cut off and you have less space to work with. It really hit me when I started typing on the cover display. You have to be real steady with your thumbs to hit the letters that you want to type. It gets real cramped, and I don't think most people would want that typing experience. But the main attraction of this phone is when you open it up. We have a foldable AMOLED display of a refresh rate of up to 120 Hz. It measures at 7.6 inches. The resolution is 1812 by 2176 pixels with a PPI of 373. This display is as good as a cover display. Both display gives a brightness of up to 1750 nits. Colors are well balanced without being oversaturated. And next to the iPhone 15 Pro Max, you can see a difference in the colors. So there's no escaping the crease with the display folds. The phone being unfolded gives you more screen to work with, but when it comes to productivity, I don't think this would be ideal for those who are looking into editing photos and videos. For creating on a mobile device around this size, I'd rather recommend a dedicated tablet that has no crease. But other than that, everything else on this phone feels immersive. This phone has the upper hand when it comes to playing certain games, watching movies, over modern sized phones today. I'm not going to say that should be the reason someone should buy this phone because the overall experience is not perfect. I find the foldable screen unresponsive sometimes and the calibration seems off. When you start an app from the cover screen, then unfold for the bigger display, the display is not always going to work properly. That happened to me a few times so far, and I'm sure a software update would fix that. There are some apps that are optimized to convert from the cover display without having to restart the app, but even with those apps, it can still act up. So you have to restart the app regardless. Since the cover screen is so narrow, pretty much anything you do can be difficult. But there are some situations where I don't want to use the phone unfolded. You're going to need two hands to unfold, so when you're out and only have one hand to work with, you have to put up with the narrow screen, which is a real tight area to work with. Apps that aren't optimized for the fold stays in its same size when you unfold it, and you can press the full screen button to basically stretch the display. Now this is a preference, but at this point, this makes me question whether this folding experience is worth it. It makes me point out the other flaws of this phone a little more, like the crease. Is that crease worth reopening an app? Is that crease worth having some of the display cropped off and cramped within the cover display? So I just wanted to get that out the way. But moving forward, the hinge on this fold is nice and sturdy. It folds and unfolds completely flat. You can pretty much have it at any angle, so Samsung did a really good job with that. Within the settings, you can activate a bunch of features around the fold, like the flex panel, which gives you an additional controls for certain apps while it's folded in 90 degrees. This gives you a sort of laptop experience. I'm normally never in flex mode because I'm not a fan of how narrow the display is. And then we have an under-screen camera within the foldable, which is 4 megapixel. And I feel like most people won't really use it considering the main camera is able to be used as a front camera with the assist of the cover display. But we'll get into that later. Overall, I think the hinge is carefully designed for this generation. It makes the build quality feel a lot more premium. We have dual speakers, one on the top, one on the bottom, a built-in fingerprint sensor within the power button on the right side, It kind of sucks that there is no under-screen fingerprint sensors like the other Galaxies, because it being on the right side, it doesn't read my left fingerprint that well compared to my right thumb because of how I normally hold the phone. We do have face unlock, but before you register your face, it tells you that a picture of you can also unlock the phone. Now, running through this phone is pretty smooth. I would say the only hiccup I would get when the app icons take a minute to revert back to a smaller form when I switch back to the cover display. Aside from that, the actual performance is silky smooth. It handles pretty much anything I throw at it. This phone first released with the Android 13, but it is also upgradable to the latest Android 14 with that Samsung One UI 6.0. What's powering this phone is a Snapdragon 8 Generation 2 with an Adreno 740 GPU. Also using the iPhone 15 Pro Max, because of the bigger display on the Fold, I lean towards gaming on this phone more. So they hit you with the 12 gigabytes of RAM, and it handles a lot of different apps in the background really well. But at the same time, some apps are not optimized for the Fold, so you're going to have to refresh them anyway. So now onto the cameras. We got a 50 megapixel main camera, 10 megapixel telephoto lens, and a 12 megapixel ultra wide. It can record up to 8K, which is kind of crazy. I don't know if anyone actually does that, but they got it. The selfie cam on the cover display, that's a 10 megapixel wide cam, and that records up to 4K. Now, one special feature I mentioned before is being able to use the main camera as the front camera. And to activate that, you open up the camera app, and then on the top right, you hit the icon that highlights the cover screen. I would say that's one highlighting feature of this phone because not a lot of phones today can do that. Now, overall pictures come out really nice, really good details, saturated enough. I do notice that a lot of the photos I take, it seems like it adds a lot of dramatic effect to it. As I'm using this camera, I can't help but think that at this price range of $1,800, I feel like Samsung should have put the same camera system found on the S23 Ultra. It's not that it's a bad camera, it's just that knowing that we're already spending more than the Ultra, we're still missing out on something. So battery life is really good for my use. Typically I average at around 5 hours of screen on time, and I would say by the end of the day I would end up at around 40 to 50% of battery life. If I were to rate my battery consumption, I would say that I'm a moderate to heavy user. Now those power users, I would say if you're gaming half the day, you'll definitely need to charge at least one time in the middle of the day. And I feel like that's decent, especially with a battery size of 4400 milliampere hour. And you would think that a phone like this would have a bigger battery, but this phone does a really good job with handling heavy apps. Now, overall, this is a fun and interesting phone, and it was such a refreshing experience. But you can tell that Samsung is pulling back on certain features. The narrow cover display gets difficult to use just for regular tasks. They skimped out on the camera system. This phone does support S Pen, but it's not included like the Ultra and the bigger Galaxy Tab. I got a feeling that it all depends on the sales. Maybe once the sales go up on these foldable phones, hopefully that's when Samsung will finally pack in those features that's already on the Galaxy Ultra. Because at this price range, it's almost like we have to reconsider what we're buying because that's in a territory of high-end laptops. But would I recommend this phone? I would, but only at a reduced price. Anyways, that's gonna do it for me. This is a very intricate phone, at least the build is, so let me know what you're thinking about this phone. As always, comment down below. Let me know what you think about the video. And make sure you're subscribed for the latest. Later!